Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
Publicly, Steve Bannon has really positioned himself as a loyalist to Donald Trump. Even when he was ousted from the Trump administration in his first term, Bannon didn't seem to hold a grudge against Trump, at least not publicly. But privately, it seems like he kind of had a different perspective on Donald Trump. And we know about that thanks to the release of the Epstein files. And homeboy was real buddy-buddy with Epstein, way more than he would have you believe. Now, we already knew about the fact that Bannon was, filming Epstein for a documentary. The documentary, of course, was meant to launder Epstein's reputation. But now we have a better sense of how often the two corresponded and what they would talk about. So, without further ado, let's talk about those conversations right now. Many of those conversations, actually kind of had to do with the two not really liking Trump all that much. I did notice the tone of these messages kind of implying that Bannon thinks less of Trump than he would have you believe. So that came into question when, people looked at this like text exchange between Bannon and Epstein. It took place on December 31st of 2018. That was actually a few months before Epstein was arrested. And I wanna read the exchange to you. Let's put this up on the screen. Okay, so it says, Epstein says, hell of a year, next will be biblical. Bannon responds, we either own 2019 or it will surely own us. Epstein writes back, I'm back in the F&B biz only. And then Steve Bannon says, F&B director. Okay, so it's about to get good. If you're wondering like, okay, what is that about? You're about to find out. At that point, Epstein says, no, it does not stand for F and blow. Spoke to my Dems this weekend, boy, are emotions running high. Bannon responds, going to blow him up right out of the box. White House has zero plan to punch back. Fort Apache with no cavalry route. They're talking about Trump. Bannon is talking about Trump there. So remember, the year is 2018. So at that point, Epstein writes back, and no soldiers in the fort. He really is borderline, not sure what he may do. And this is when Bannon responds, I think it's beyond borderline. 25th Amendment, which is something that you heard Cenk say a lot about Trump in his first term. Invoke the 25th Amendment, get him out of office. He's not mentally sound. Turns out Bannon agreed. So these text messages were after Democrats had taken control of the House in 2018, when the blue wave happened during the midterms. And of course, this had a major impact on the second half of Trump's first term because it hindered him or prevented him from passing any more legislation. But I want to be clear, I don't think he had any interest in passing any other legislation anyway. Now in his second term, he's made it clear, I'm not planning on passing any more legislation. I already did everything I wanted to do. Mainly the tax cuts for the rich, the big beautiful bill. That's all he wanted. He just wanted tax cuts. Everything else and everyone else can go ahead and F off. But anyway, now, according to the New York Times, in an effort to kind of be fair to Bannon, I'm gonna give you his self-defense. So the Times writes that a torrent of text and email exchanges show that after Bannon and Epstein met in late 2017, Epstein first tried to meet with Bannon in November 2016 after Trump won the presidency, the documents suggest. But Bannon, a top campaign strategist for Trump and later a senior White House official, agreed only after the president fired him in August of 2017. So at that point, they start messaging each other, text messaging each other. So Bannon wasn't working for Trump during the period of time that he had this or sparked this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But he still had connections to the Trump White House and made himself a household name, within the conservative movement, which is pretty obvious. So this is why conservatives and, part of the MAGA crowd is questioning Bannon and what his game was, right? So former National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn posted a response to the text message exchange featuring Bannon and Epstein. And he says this: the White House, or at least DOJ, needs to come out and say what they plan on doing with this information. I remember all the 25th Amendment talk back in the first term. It was really ugly. If Bannon and Epstein were behind it, Bannon needs to be brought in for questioning, and he needs to address this and all the other crap he was doing on behalf of Epstein. So look, there are people who are really upset. I'll read more comments from the right in just a minute, but since I have your attention, and if you happen to be on the right and now you're questioning Bannon, please believe me when I say that he got arrested because of the fact that he promoted a sham fundraiser for a border wall and then proceeded to pocket the money. He is not your friend. He stole from you. He is a bad guy. Okay, so there's really nothing else to say about him. One of the other exchanges with Epstein that I thought was incredible was Epstein basically telling Bannon, you know, this whole populist shtick, you do it better than Trump does. You should take it and make it your own. It's all a shtick. It's a facade. It's not real, okay? But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene also weighed in on this and said the following on X: I agree completely. Steve Bannon went to jail for Trump. I was there, but back on January 1st, 2019, after Dems took the House, he was texting with Epstein about the 25th Amendment. Also, there's no excuse for having such a friendly relationship with Epstein post-conviction. By the way, I mean, yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, you're hitting homeboy up 2017, 2018, whatever. This is like obviously many years after Epstein had pled guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution, which I don't even like saying that. It's just the legal way of phrasing it. Minors can't engage in prostitution. Okay, so soliciting a minor for rape, really. Anyway, so the New York Times notes that in the 6 months before Epstein was arrested and charged with the sex trafficking of minors in July of 2019, so this was the second arrest, Bannon's name appears nearly every day in the files. Okay, so often because the men were exchanging text messages. So he gets arrested again, and Bannon's like, we're still buddies, not a big deal. And this set of text messages isn't even the start of the growing fury MAGA is feeling toward Bannon right now. So I'll give you a few people. There's Brendan Dilley, who says it's easy to see who takes his money and relies on his influencer network because they're all silent about his overt friendship and working relationship with Epstein. You know who you are. You're all cowards. You shun me because of my language, but you have zero integrity. I know nothing about Brendan Dilley at all, but I commend him for calling a spade, at least in this case, because there does tend to be this like weird urge that some people have, and I do see it on both sides, where the guy you support ends up doing something that's like, that goes against everything they claim to believe, that goes against everything you like, right? And then their supporters, for whatever reason, don't want to stop supporting them. So they like make excuses or they stay silent. We need to live in reality, okay? You need to acknowledge when someone that you admired turned out to be a piece of crap. And to be honest, I always thought that about Bannon anyway. Now, Larry, another person on X, says has he offered any explanation for this? And he posted a headline from Dinesh D'Souza, who had posted a headline saying Steve Bannon was planning to produce a pro-Epstein documentary on the day of financier's arrest. Now, of course, Bannon says his relationship with Epstein was strictly professional. He says this: I am a filmmaker and a TV host with decades of experience interviewing controversial figures. That's the only lens through which these private communications should be viewed. A documentary filmmaker working over a period of time to secure 50 hours of interviews from a reclusive subject. So does documentary filmmaking require you to want to invoke the 25th Amendment against a president you're pretending to be loyal to? That's interesting. Adding to the film, which he says he plans to release later this year, He says that it will fully expose Epstein and destroy the very myths he created. I'm sure that's what's going to happen. And his spokesperson also said that Bannon sought only to integrate, only to integrate himself with Epstein for the documentary. Yeah, Michael Wolff too. Like, being super buddy, super friendly, giving Epstein advice on how to, maneuver certain issues. You're doing that for your craft, for the work that you do, for your journalism, for your documentary. I'm sure. Anyway, but the documents show that he at least entertained those perks with being friends with Epstein. Bannon did, and Bannon's spokesperson couldn't provide receipts to prove otherwise. So the lies aren't good at this point. I don't think most people are buying it. But if this was all about the film, why did Epstein introduce you to all the political figures he knew? Because you wanted to advise right-wing foreign politicians. And why would you also purposely paint yourself as a bad guy, helping a pedophile's image just for the sake of a documentary? So here's another exchange. Steve Bannon starts this one out. Need the list from the attorney today. Let me know how Oliver goes. Then he gets a response. Okay, thanks, appreciate it. As numbers go, I guess my 38 is still worse than your 1.7. And here's the relevant part. He says, we need to work around your 38 first. We need to push back on the lies, then crush the pedo trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as philanthropist, which is what a lot of shady rich people do in order to launder their image. They engage in philanthropy. So good job, Bannon. I guess that's what you need to do in order to put out a documentary. You need to give a pedophile advice on how to beat the pedo trafficking narrative. Anyway, these men are sick, and I'm glad that now we have some evidence that we can show, provide that evidence to double down on what a lot of us already knew. Bannon is gross. Bannon is not to be trusted. And he literally stole from the very people who trusted him most to invest in a border wall. Sad.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.